Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Environmental Planning Commission meeting of April 19th, 2023. I call the meeting to order at 7 p.m. For those joining us in person, please note that due to our hybrid environment, audio and video presentations can no longer be shared from the lectern. Requests to show an audio or video presentation during a meeting should be directed to epc@mountainview.gov by 4:30 p.m. on the meeting date. Additionally, due to our hybrid environment, we will no longer have speakers line up to speak on an item. Anyone wishing to address the EPC in person must complete a yellow speaker card. Please indicate the name you would like to be called by when it is your turn to speak and the item number on which you wish to speak. Please complete one yellow speaker card for each item on which you wish to speak and turn them in to the EPC clerk as soon as possible, but no later than the call for public comment on the item you are speaking on. Instructions for addressing the commission virtually may be found on the posted agenda. Now I will ask the EPC clerk to proceed with roll call.
So all commissioners are present with the exception of Commissioner Haymeyer, who is absent. And I will note that the digital system is picking Commissioner Haymeyer up as present, but she is in fact absent.
Okay, thank you. And now we will move on to agenda item 3.1, Environmental Planning Commission meeting minutes of March 15th, 2023 and March 22nd of 2023. Does anyone have anything to discuss? Seeing none, we will move to public comment. If anyone in attendance would like to provide comments on the minutes, please fill out the yellow speaker card and provide it to the EPC clerk. If anyone on Zoom would like to provide comments on the minutes, please click the raise hand button in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. Phone users can mute and unmute themselves with *6. I don't see anyone.
No members of the public wishing to speak on this item.
Thank you very much. So now we will go to an EPC vote. Do I have a motion? Thank you. In a second, yes. My screen is not working.
I don't think so. Could you please say who made the motion?
Oh, yes. The motion came from Commissioner Gutierrez with a second by Commissioner Cranston. I just want to let you know really quick that my screen is not showing what everyone else is. Can we have an EPC vote?
If your screen is not working, we can do a roll call vote. Yeah.
If you don't mind, please. Thank you.
Commissioner Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Cranston?
Yes.
Commissioner Gutierrez?
Yay.
Commissioner Haymeyer is absent. Commissioner Nunez?
Yes.
Vice Chair Dempsey?
Yes.
And Chair Yin.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0 with Commissioner Haymeyer absent.
We'll close that portion of the agenda and move on to oral communications. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the EPC on any matter not on the agenda. Speakers are allowed to speak on any topic for up to 3 minutes during the section. State law prohibits the Commission from acting on non-agenda items. If anyone in attendance would like to provide comments on non-agenda items, please fill out a yellow speaker card and provide it to the EPC clerk. If anyone on Zoom would like to provide comment on non-agenda items, please click the raise hand button on Zoom or press *9 on your phone. Phone users can mute and unmute themselves with *6.
No members of the public wishing to speak on this item.
All right, thank you. Moving on to agenda item 5.1, code amendments to chapter 36 zoning of the city code and the downtown P19 precise plan to repeal the sidewalk cafe program and replace it with a new outdoor patio program. We'll first have a staff presentation, then questions by the EPC, followed by public comment. At the closure of public comment, the commission will then deliberate and take action. Staff presentation will be from Krishna Penolar, project planner, and Lindsay Hagan, Assistant Community Development Director. Also in attendance are Aruna Boduna, I hope I pronounced that right, Transportation Planner, and Dawn Cameron, Public Works Director.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Krisha Pinoyar, Associate Planner, and I'm joined by Lindsay Hagan, Assistant Community Development Director. We're here to present the code amendments to Chapter 36 in the Downtown Precise Plan to repeal the Sidewalk Cafe program with the new outdoor patio program. To provide some context to the proposed amendments, I'll briefly explain the previous programs that have led to the changes to the existing outdoor dining program. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic and associated shelter-in-place orders, businesses in the downtown who previously wanted to have outdoor dining were permitted to do so through the Sidewalk Cafe program. The program allowed for operations in the sidewalk areas of Castro Street and the cross streets, as well as in parking stalls along Castro Street and private property adjacent to the sidewalk. The program required a license agreement and annual renewal, both administered by the Planning Division, as it lived in Article 15 of the zoning ordinance. The design of outdoor dining was primarily oriented towards operations adjacent to vehicular traffic and required traffic-rated planters. On June 9, 2020, City Council created the Castro Streets program and closed the 100 to 400 blocks of Castro Street for outdoor operations. This closure allowed businesses to operate outdoors with minimal design requirements, as the program was intended to support business operations due to the limitations of operating indoors, which was required by the shelter-in-place orders. Businesses are currently operating under the existing program, which is anticipated to sunset by January 2024. On October 25, 2022, the Council adopted the PED Mall along the 100 to 300 blocks of Castro Street between Evelyn Avenue and California Street, which resulted in the permanent closure of these 3 blocks to vehicular traffic, with cross streets to remain open. As part of this adoption, staff identified interim pedestrian mall implementation measures, which required establishment of new standards and guidelines. On March 20, 2023, the Council Ad Hoc Committee approved the pedestrian mall standards guidelines. To ensure consistency in the downtown area, staff is recommending that the pedestrian mall standards guidelines, reviewed by the Ad Hoc Committee and recommended for approval, should be applied to the larger downtown area. These new guidelines for outdoor activities are called the Downtown Mountain View Outdoor Patio Standards Guidelines and will replace the previous Sidewalk Cafe program. The new program provides new patio layout, furnishings, and activities permitted in the pedestrian mall area. Outdoor activities are permitted in the program zone of the pedestrian mall, as shown in the image above, as well as sidewalk areas and private property throughout the downtown. These procedural changes and implementation of the new guidelines require code changes. The key code changes to the zoning ordinance and precise plan are intended to codify permitting and licensing requirements. The Planning Division previously administered outdoor activities on both private and public right-of-way. Planning will still require a planning permit for outdoor activities on private property, but the Public Works Division will issue a license agreement for outdoor activities in the right-of-way. The Sidewalk Cafe guidelines will be replaced by the Downtown Mountain View Outdoor Patio Standards and Guidelines, and the code changes being proposed will repeal Chapter 36 for sidewalk cafes and Chapter 15 for outdoor retail. Therefore, changes to Chapter 36 that are proposed are meant to clarify the development review permit requirements, definitions, and removal of other sidewalk cafe references for consistency with the new program. Furthermore, additional clarification for outdoor activities will be clarified in the Downtown Precise Plan. To clarify, no changes to permitted outdoor activities for private property. Outdoor merchandise, dining, and live entertainment will continue to be permitted in commercial areas of the downtown, but as stated, prior code changes are needed to continue permitting these activities. So tonight, EPC is only reviewing the zoning ordinance and downtown precise plan code updates to clarify permitting process and outdoor activities on private property. The outdoor patio standard guidelines document have already been recommended for approval by the Council Ad Hoc Committee and are going to be reviewed by Council along with these code changes that is before EPC tonight. Therefore, in conclusion, staff recommends for EPC to recommend City Council to approve the proposed text amendments to Chapter 36 and the Downtown Precise Plan to repeal the Sidewalk Cafe program and replace it with references to the new outdoor patio program, as these changes are within EPC's purview. Thank you for your time. Staff from both the Public Works and Planning Division are here for any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Do the commissioners have any questions? Commissioner Cranston.
So 2 questions that I sent you over the weekend, so hopefully you're all prepared for. Krishna, can you pull up the map from the chart? So this was, one of my questions was specifically the section, if you, for the other commissioners, the way the pedestrian mall is defined, it goes to this, what's called West Evelyn, and doesn't continue down, it stops at that mid-block and doesn't go all the way to the end of the 100 block of Castro Street. It leaves 4 businesses essentially not covered. And since the proposed standards remove the ability to apply for using parklets in the parking spaces and sidewalk, those businesses today, because the way it's designed, actually are essentially using pedestrian mall area. This would indicate that they would no longer have that ability to do that, and the removal of the ability to use the parking spaces or the sidewalks would mean that those 4 businesses would potentially not be, essentially would no longer be able to have outdoor dining in those areas. And Orem hummus is very popular. Doppio Zero, not Doppio Zero. I'm blanking the other Italian restaurant is yeah. Buses are. I've been there. It's been there since I've been here. The others are newer, but I would hate to see them jeopardized. So can you discuss how that would be affected by these rules and how those 4 businesses would be impacted?
Yeah, and for clarification, the pedestrian malls do end at the East Evelyn Avenue leg. So you're correct that they technically are not part of the pedestrian malls area. However, we are going to study their potential for having outdoor dining on a case-by-case basis, with consideration that they maintain a bike slot, which is right next to their frontage area. So they do have the ability to continue operating outdoor dining, as that traffic lane in front of them is not currently being used, but it just wouldn't be considered a program patio as defined in the code, but there's still feasibility of having outdoor dining.
Okay. So it would be an exception? I mean, how would that work? Because it's not, if we specifically exclude parking spaces and specifically exclude sidewalk, where do they
defer to Don Cameron here, Public Works Director.
Good evening, Chair Yin, Commissioners. Yes, I'm Dawn Cameron, Public Works Director. So as was being mentioned, we do have the capability during this interim pedestrian mall period that while that traffic lane in front of their businesses is closed off to traffic, and it will remain closed off for the time being, we can issue licenses and allow them to operate out there, kind of create an area, treat it more like a extended sidewalk use in that case, since there's no cars allowed on that traffic lane. But we do want to make sure we don't block the bike lane that's out there. But it will be temporary, because what's going to be happening is, if everything works out, in about 2 years, well, maybe, probably for this section, we're about 2 years away, we are going to start construction of the grade separation project. And as part of that, Evelyn will be realigned to follow Castle Street and connect through, and there won't be any parklets in front of those businesses. There'll be an extended patio area, which after that construction's done, we may be able to still continue to let them use it temporarily. And then the next step for all of this is in the next 3 to 4 years, start the process of planning and designing what's called the permanent pedestrian mall. And for that permanent pedestrian mall, what's going to happen is we are going to rip up everything, sidewalks, streets, everything, completely rebuild it all at one level. And through that process, we'll be redefining outdoor dining all along these blocks as we now create this new pedestrian mall. We won't know what that's going to look like until we go through what we're planning to do is a very extensive, robust community engagement and design process for the permanent pedestrian mall. So the next 2 to 3 years is going to be a learning of how everything's working with the existing conditions out there. Some people have heard me talk about nothing permanent's getting installed. Everything has to be movable. We want to be able to adjust, move things around, learn from it. It will help us get ready for the permanent mall, allow us to stay flexible in working with the businesses and support them to the greatest extent possible, including the businesses that you're referring to, Commissioner Cranston. And then, but they are going to, those 4 businesses are going to be somewhat disrupted when it is time for us to construct the grade step and realign Castro and Evelyn, and we will be reopening that street at that time to automobile traffic. So we'll work with them, we will accommodate them the best as possible, but conditions are going to change for them over the years.
So the staff report for council made it look like that realignment would actually, instead of being 2 L's, that everyone would be straightened.
So that has been changed. That has been changed, and we have presented to both the Castro Ped Mall Ad Hoc Committee of the City Council, as well as we recently went to the Council Transportation Committee and showed them that that alignment has changed to be more of as an S-curve connection instead of two 90-degree turns. And that was able to be done because of closing the 100 block street to traffic. So we're going to have a much more elegant design to that connection through, which is actually going to create a larger plaza area in front of some of these businesses as well. And I'm sorry, I can't put on screen for you what that would look like. I didn't tee it up for you all. It is available if you looked at the Council Transportation Committee meeting packet from April 10th. It's in there, but we can send it. We can also just send it to you after, can't we do that? And we can show you what it's going to look like.
Okay, and then question 2. What else is it? The extension of these rules to the full precise plan area, specifically changing from the 4 feet permitted on the sidewalk to 8 feet. If it's extended into the side streets, there are a lot of businesses. Red Walk Cafe uses the side streets. I counted about 8 different businesses along there that are currently have seating on the sidewalk on the side streets. In addition, if it were to extend down as far as like where the Starbucks is, you've got Starbucks is using some of that space, Mediterranean Grill is using some of that space, One Ounce Coffee, I can't think of the name, there's a business right next to it. How is this, by going from 8 feet to 4 feet to 8 feet, do those businesses, no more seating on the Villa Street side of Red Rock, no more outdoor seating at Dana Street Coffee, no more seating at Mifflin 101? What does that mean?
So I think part of the extended width is to address concerns that have been raised over the years about sidewalk cafes. In the past, particularly in the 100 block, they've gotten really congested with umbrellas, other tables that start inching into the point where you get kind of traffic jam in the sidewalk area. So I think part of this 8-foot is to respond to the need to provide clear space for pedestrians to be able to get through the area. But you do raise a great point that I think we did mention in the staff report of this will impact some businesses and how they're currently laid out. Some of the ones you mentioned, for example, Starbucks, they actually have extended curb areas where there's sort of seating on both sides of the sidewalk. And I think in those cases, and I guess I would defer to Public Works on this, but in those cases, as long as there's an 8-foot width kind of maintained, we can consider those seating areas as part of the licensing program.
That is correct, as long as we can maintain the 8-foot. And thank you, Assistant Director. We have constantly received concerns, and we've heard goals that we need to keep more space clear for pedestrians. It gets way too congested. I've also been told by staff that we've gone out and looked at some of these areas, and in many of these areas, they can still have 2-person tables if they keep it right up against the building, and we'll still be able to meet the clearance requirements. So we will do our best to work with businesses to, issue the licenses agreements if there is adequate room for them to have a table out there, but still maintain a nice, clear pedestrian pathway.
Did you have any other questions? All right, Commissioner Dempsey.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. If I may, I actually want to follow up a little bit on that. I have a number of questions, but I think Bill's question is the great place to start. I'm curious to know what outreach was done in advance of drafting these, or what outreach was done after you drafted them, but before tonight. Did you talk to the chamber? Did you talk to the business owners that are potentially going to be affected by some of these changes? How much outreach was done?
So I will say that Public Works, Community Development, and particular Economic Vitality Manager, John Lang, we've all been working in lockstep and partnership. There has been extensive outreach and communication done with stakeholders for the last year about all of this. I know that the guidelines and standards and updates and everything that's been planned has been sent to the Downtown Committee more than once. Chamber of Commerce has been involved. Staff has held what's called office hours out on the street of the 100, 200, 300 blocks and met businesses right where they're at to talk to them, share with them what the plans are. So there's been a lot of work to work closely with the businesses in the chamber and the community. We've done a fair amount of survey and input from our community in terms of what they are looking for and what they value in this upcoming Castro pedestrian mall.
That's really welcome news because, as Commissioner Cranston said, a lot of these businesses are, they're local treasures. They're places that we've grown up at or people that we know. Places that our families love, and so I just want to make sure we're very gentle with them because they're the reason that everybody comes downtown. And actually, I think mentioning, this is something that I think ought to end up in the staff report eventually that kind of covers what some of the outreach has been like, because outreach is often a very important part of our deliberations when we're talking about other types of developments, and I think outreach is equally important when it comes to this. So if at some point you could add or discuss what the outreach has been, I think that would be really important.
And I can also suggest we are planning to go to council on May 9th, which with the full package that is even more than what you're seeing here. And there is a section that does summarize all the outreach that was done.
So, yeah.
Sorry, if I can add one more thing. This is tangentially related to this question. Part of also what's being considered is, and this will also be going to council, is considering a small grant program to assist some of these businesses with purchasing furnishings that might align with this program. So I think we really tried to think, as city staff, kind of comprehensively of what this new program and rolling it out, and how to continue supporting the businesses.
That's a great idea. So a few more granular questions. So one of them I was really kind of puzzled by. In the new patio guidelines, it appears to prohibit dancing. And I had kind of like a footloose moment. Help me understand why the city would want to prohibit dancing at non-amplified live events.
Yeah, so it's a great question. I think these spaces where these outdoor patios are relatively small, and the dancing aspect requires actually a fair number of space per person to actually have sort of official dancing events. And so a lot of these outdoor patios really wouldn't be able to accommodate that, plus any other infrastructure or furnishings that might be in these spaces. So part of it is purely sort of a spatial limitation. And so the other kind of piece to this is in terms of the activities that are allowed in these patios, really the primary one is the outdoor dining. And some of these other activities that are outlined in the patio guidelines are really sort of secondary uses. So the live entertainment is sort of a secondary aspect of it. And so really, I think at the end of the day, it comes down to spatial space.
Okay. No, I can understand that. Perhaps if I could make a suggestion is rather than prohibit it, and I'm not saying you got to turn it into a dance club. I wish that it were possible, and maybe you just had to ask the city for permission. And if the city said, "Yeah, right, the space you want to do it in is under control," yeah, we'd be fine with that. If it was a discretionary thing rather than outright prohibited, that would make a little bit more sense to me. And moreover, I think what I had in my head is if you've got some people out there playing, and a few elders or a few parents get up and start dancing a little bit, it would become weird to imagine, well, you're breaking the law right now, and somebody could call the cops on you. Like, that's weird, right? And I think that, not that I can't imagine anyone really doing that, but I think it's a little weird to ban dancing downtown. So I just wish it were discretionary. So that's enough about dancing. Why did we prohibit tents? And I'll tell you why I ask this, is we don't need them right now, but in the winter, having a tent when it's raining a lot isn't a terrible idea. And I know that Grapevines was really popular. It was a big tent. A lot of people were in there. What's the thinking behind banning tents?
So one of the reasons for banning tents is that it's seen as a temporary structure. And so there's additional building and fire code limitations to that. I think, is Transportation Aruna Baduna online, and she can further clarify that.
Sure. Thank you, Krisha. Thank you, Chair, for the question. This is Aruna Baduna, Transportation Planner. The reason for tents are considered, like Krisha said, some kind of temporary structures, and we are planning for interim pedestrian mall, where we are saying no structures are permitted because those will require some harnessing into the ground. And due to the winds, we have seen some issues with the tent-like structures as well. So that was a concern, safety concern as well. And right now we are planning, as I said, for the interim pedestrian mall, we are saying no permanent structures are permitted in the interim conditions. When we plan and envision for the future permanent mall conditions, it could be different. It could be planned differently at that time, but during the course for the interim for the next 3 to 5 years, the structures are being prohibited because those are permanent changes to the street.
Okay.
If I could also add on, so as Transportation Baduna was mentioning, not only are they considered structures, as I mentioned earlier, everything has to be movable. One of the reasons why is this is still a street. It's also still a drainage channel. You're going to get, the rains that we got. We're still going to, hopefully we'll keep getting rains during the winter. And the other key thing is we need to be able to, now that there's so much eating and drinking happening in the street and all the spills, we are going to be pressure washing those streets at least twice a year, which is one of the reasons we need everybody to be able to take everything down, move things out so we can give the street a thorough cleaning. And the tents that were being put up got bigger and bigger. They had to be weighed down specially or they would blow over. They were not very, they started to create more problems. The other problem they created is in the winter you also want heaters. Heaters and tents don't mix. And that was creating a lot of conflicts, a lot of issues for us as well. One of the things that we have to start thinking about changing our mindset here a little bit with the outdoor dining is that, please recall that when we went into COVID and the pandemic and we opened up the street for outdoor dining, and it was because no indoor dining was allowed. And the only way these businesses could survive was having the tables outside. And even through the winter months, the cold months, the rain, and so on, we were working with them to help them do as much business as possible. They are fully allowed to use their indoor capacity again. And now the outdoor dining is more of an enhancement, an amenity. It is to activate the street as well. But it does not necessarily mean then that we're setting this up to be an all-weather condition. And this is typical with other outdoor pedestrian mall locations, is that you're not necessarily setting it up that it's going to make it through all your super windy, rainy storms and your extra cold weather. That's what the indoor provision, the indoor dining is for. So part of this is shifting our mindset in terms of what we're trying to accomplish here with the pedestrian mall and the outdoor dining.
With your forbearance, Madam Chair, I have a couple other quick questions. Electric heaters, I think, were prohibited, although it wasn't clear to me whether you accepted portable battery ones or whether that was just because you didn't want a cord. I think we saw a letter actually from the public where somebody was not happy about that. Walk us through why you would prohibit electric, but you would permit propane.
So, well, thank you for the question. It was something that also came up at the council ad hoc committee for the pedestrian mall. The version you're seeing here is what they saw. We've made a couple modifications of these based upon their input. So the reason originally we said no electric heaters is because we have not been able, there's no way to plug in an electric heater in the street because no, we're not going to allow the cords and the extension cords and all of that. So we don't have an electrical support system. And we were not able to find models of electric heaters that were battery operated or solar powered or something like that that looked like that could work. However, we know technology is constantly changing. New products are coming on the market. So we have made a revision to the guidelines based upon the direction we received from the ad hoc committee, which also just plain made a lot of sense, where it does now say electric heaters shall be solar or battery powered. Solar panels must not present safety hazards, so they can't be big, huge, right? And generators cannot be used to power them. So if something comes on the market or something we weren't aware of and a business can find it and it's battery powered or solar powered and can be safe, they're allowed.
I think that's a great solution. So last question I have for you, I promise. It has to do with ADA compliance. And I think, as you know, that a lot of the businesses downtown have been very concerned and even litigated against because of claims of ADA noncompliance. What do you imagine, pick a random restaurant anywhere on Castro Street, is there anything they're going to have to do other than sort of the width of the tables and having the ADA compliant sort of wheelchair accessible tables evenly dispersed throughout whatever their footprint is? Is there anything else they're going to have to do? Are they going to have to build like a little ramp that goes from the front of the business down over the curb into the patio? Is there anything else you imagine they're going to have to do? And have you kind of thought through how to make this, how to help these businesses not get sued for ADA technical noncompliance?
We're working closely again with the Economic Vitality Manager Lang in terms of working towards this, as you're saying, to provide full accessibility and to support the businesses in doing so. I'm not a complete expert in terms of related to the businesses themselves, but I can tell you what we're planning. So first off, the city is going to be providing the patio barriers, and we're going to be setting them up, and every one of them is going to be set up with an opening out to the central walkway in the street that is ADA compliant. So for any business that has outdoor dining in the street, patrons will be able to get to that outdoor dining area from the central walkway. Now, to assist in getting to the central walkway, not only, of course, do we have the curb ramps at the intersection corners, and every block has a mid-block crossing, we are going to be putting in some additional ramps that are going to even be between the mid-block crossings and the corners that will connect from the stairs down to the central walkway between the patio barriers, so that there are frequent places where people can get from the sidewalk down to the street level, and then they can access these areas from the street level. One of the comments and concerns we did hear at the ad hoc committee was the portable ramps that you can just buy. They tend to be aluminum, they tend to be noisy, so we've been asked to research what we can do to put ramps out there that look nice and aren't too noisy. So we are still investigating that, because here's the other goal. We want them to be movable, because one of the things we're trying to do here is, as the vacancies are filled and new businesses come in, if they would like an outdoor patio area and right in front of there, but we put a ramp right there, we want to be able to move it so we can set something up for them. There's going to be a lot of public spaces between that the city's going to program and put furnishings in, and we're prepared to move those around as the business needs change as well. So, but I know that's a longer answer, but the short answer is we are making arrangements to make it more accessible to get from the sidewalk to the street more frequently along the block.
That's really smart thinking. Thank you. And thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Gutierrez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your help. Thank you for the reports. The information is very well appreciated by all of us here on the commission, but also in the community. I've got a few questions. They're not that difficult. They'll be easy to answer. I'm not going to do any gotcha things. But I have to ask you, though, how many times, or have there been any incidents throughout the last year or two of people dancing in the streets on Castro?
I'm not sure that we really can answer that question, because we don't, naturally people can move and dance in the street that we wouldn't be regulating.
Exactly. So I agree with Chairman Dempsey about the use of the word of prohibit, because that implies a legal connotation. And for me, if you're going to do something like that, you better have precedent. Let's have some examples of when this was an issue to use such a strong word where we're going to codify this language. That's what I'm looking at. Now, I understand why you would want to do this. I completely agree. But on the flip side, I have to bring this point up so that it makes sense to all of us as to why you're using that type of language. And that's something that I'm sure our city attorney understands that perspective. And we can agree to disagree, but before we use the word prohibit, I would like to have some sort of concrete example of why we're using such a strong piece of language. Outside of that, I'm not going to say anything else about that point. I understand. My second question, though, is for those businesses, those four that are going to be affected because of restrictions per se. Now, I understand you did community outreach. I'm a little cynical. Sorry. So if you can guarantee me that these four businesses were spoken to by someone from the staff, I'll believe you. But if you just say general outreach and it was done and made, I may not believe you. And again, I'm not being disrespectful. It's just my nature, because I know a lot of these businesses, and I have a different viewpoint from yourself in terms of the outdoor space. I totally understand why we have to regulate it with certain things being allowed and not allowed, but I would like to suggest that our mindset should stay the same in terms of economic vitality. And Castro is the heart and soul of the city of Mountain View with its restaurant options and the outdoor facilities that it offers. So for us to just say up to a certain point in time, hey, we allowed you to have the outdoor spacing at the time because of COVID and the pandemic. Now we're going to roll this back. You have the ability to use the inside space of your area. But at this point in time, not all businesses are created equal. They don't all have the same outside space. So it's a little uneven. And when we leveled the playing field to have that be open to every business, understanding its limitations, I think that's where the growth came back of not only are we in it together, but we'll be able to beat this together. And economically speaking, these businesses, our restaurants, our friends that are there on Castro Street have been blossoming. I wouldn't want to roll that back. I understand the limitations, but I suggest that we also change the mindset in terms of how we look at our business opportunities in an area such as Castro, where we've been asking about how can we make it better for years. So having said that, I appreciate your time.
Commissioner Nunez, do you have any questions?
So I'm also curious about the outreach, but I hope my question's a little more. Yep. So I was looking, I think if I understood you correctly, it might have been mentioned, or at least the last that I could find it mentioned was in the October 11th council report, and it does kind of say something to the effect of, outreach will continue, and I think there was a meeting with like the downtown business committee or something like that. I guess I'm just curious or wondering what the feedback was. Like specifically, what was the feedback collected? Like how many people were spoken to? What was the preponderance of feedback? Like 20 people said they wanted, umbrellas. 8 people said they wanted bike racks. Like what was the prevailing data or information gathered from this outreach, or any available up to this point? Because it would be actually helpful to understand some of the quantified feedback.
I'm going to have Transportation Planner Aruna Baduna respond to that comment.
Thank you, Assistant Director. This is Aruna Baduna, Transportation Planner. Just to reiterate the question is about how many outreach meetings have been done and what was the specific feedback from the outreach meetings, right?
Yeah, so, we kind of just went, for example, through the housing element process, right? And there was a whole section, I don't assume it was as, comprehensive because the housing element is crazy, but, there was a whole section, stating we met 100 people, 25 of them said they were interested in parks, 80 in affordable housing, right? Like, is there anything similar that you can share with the commission here regarding, sentiment, feedback, outlook, business impact? Like, what were the, concerns or feedback, and how were they quantified, and what were the results or outcomes up to this point?
Sure. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Commissioner, for your question, for repeating the question. I know we did not quantify all those results in your report. However, in October 11th, you're talking about the establishment of pedestrian malls. Yes, the feedback was well documented in the council reports prior to that. Staff did conduct several outreach meetings once a pedestrian mall was established to seek feedback from the businesses on the interim guidelines that you're reviewing right now. We have conducted block by block office hours. For each block, staff allocated time on each block, and businesses would come and talk to us. We do There was general feedback. There was not a yes or no vote at these meetings, but general feedback on what the information that was presented to them, and we did send out information and any links that we could, documents prior to the meeting on what was going to be discussed. And again, we did not quantify the results, but we have made several changes based on the feedback that we have received. And the general feedback was very supportive of continuing the permanent closure of the street to vehicular traffic, and establishing some clear guidance on what was coming and how soon it was coming. And there was feedback on what kind of heaters, like you said, like we discussed before, permitting mushroom cap heaters or prohibiting electric heaters. Based on the feedback we received, we amended the guidelines to reflect, what will be included in the May 9th council memo. But again, just to kind of say, we did not quantify, but we have revised and amended and communicated back. Actually, today we had staff hours on Castro to talk to the businesses, and we have been communicating back and forth via email and meetings to the businesses. But if you're looking for specific quantification, I do have the attendance, of who the businesses were at these meetings, of several meetings that we have had, not essentially quantifying yet.
Yeah, thanks. That's fine, because documentation and information can be just as good, sometimes better if it's qualitative as well. So to what extent, or I guess I'll just ask, what was the qualitative feedback provided? Similar to the heater feedback that you mentioned, I'm looking for something like that. Like, was it all they brought up was heaters? What was, through all of this, so I'm not asking about like the methodology of outreach, right, or the times and places or attendees. I'm trying to understand what was the feedback that was provided, similar to how you just brought up the heaters, and in what ways was that incorporated into this proposal?
Thank you for the question again. The feedback the feedback was pretty elaborate on all the elements that were presented. Heaters was one item. We talked about bringing back the rental fee. We talked about the new application process and insurance requirements. So there was feedback on, what the insurance requirements would be. And we are kind of relating back to the pre-COVID conditions where we had the sidewalk cafe program. So it was, our communication was, it will be very similar to those. So we are not creating an entirely new program, although some guidelines do vary now. So for the businesses that are familiar and were operating sidewalk cafe previously, they did understand. But for the few businesses that did not have a sidewalk cafe, they had questions about, what kind of umbrellas, can they put their business logo, business name on the umbrellas was one question. Heaters was another question. What are the upcoming insurance requirements was a question. How was the layout going to change in the future was a question, because pre-COVID in the sidewalk cafe program, it was between 3 to 3 in the parking stalls. But with the new program, it's going to align with this business frontage. So we kind of communicated that to them. So it varied bit, based on the information we brought to them. There was a lot of feedback and clarification provided to the businesses. And, on the corner businesses, I know the previous question talked about, how did we message to the corner businesses or the businesses that were not included in the Ped Mall portion between the two Evelyns. Yes, those businesses did attend the staff hours that they were present at the staff hours, and we did communicate with them about the upcoming grade separation project and how Evelyn would be connecting, on both sides of the street with an S-curve. We did communicate to them that until that construction happens, they could operate outdoor, but once a construction happens, it would be an extended sidewalk area, not essentially a program zone of a pedestrian mall. So we did do outreach individually to the blocks and some specific businesses as well.
Okay, thank you. So that was very helpful. I heard there was concerns about the insurance requirements, the application process. Concern. It sounds like the umbrellas and how many they could place, et cetera. I think that relates a little bit to this concept of like kind of temporary structures and such. I guess I am curious, specifically down that line. To what extent or after you collected this information, concerns about kind of like, umbrellas and such, or other kind of like temporary structures, was there, or, what's the plan for getting the, like any incorporation of that feedback from the plan? Was there an opportunity to engage with the business community again, and then did they kind of give a blessing, for example, or not that they get to necessarily approve this or not, right? But to what extent was there almost like a back and forth so far around some of the temporary structures? Like, are they happy about the changes? Like, do you have that information or feedback available at this time?
So if I may, again, it's been a very interactive process. I'm aware of how often Transportation Bodona and Economic Vitality Manager Lang has been out on Castro Street. It's been almost constant for the last several months, so it's been very iterative. And for instance, bringing up the umbrellas, the original guidelines just showed your standard center pole umbrellas. Out there, they've already, many of them, invested in the much larger side-mounted umbrellas. And as long as they're on wheels and it's easy for one person to move it, we said, oh, okay, that works. We added those to the guidelines. As noted, there were concerns when we said no mushroom cap heaters because they have created certain problems. They get placed too close to flammable materials and other problems, but the businesses really favored them. So we put them back in, but said we got to be more stringent with our guidelines on how you use them because we have to keep things safe. We put up the sample barriers. We needed to buy something off the shelf because there's not time to have things custom made. And we put them out there, and we've invited the businesses to tell us which design they like the best. And not everybody's, they've been invited, but we've gotten pretty consistent feedback on what style is preferred. So that's the style we're moving towards. I'll also note, again, we started as the basis for these guidelines, the guidelines for the sidewalk cafe, and we didn't move too far off of those. We enhanced them, but we were working with something the city already had adopted and approved and was using for outdoor dining. The other piece is, again, the whole concept behind the interim ped mall is to be flexible and adaptable. This gets us started. And there is a strong desire to get some certainty in place, which is why we're going to Council May 9th to adopt these. But in that action Council is taking, if they agree, they're going to give authority to the Public Works Director, where I'll be taking a lot of advice from Community Development on modifying these as we see the needs are changed and as we work with the businesses, and that is our intent. And but again, this is a very multi-departmental effort. There's a lot of issues that we have to make sure are being handled right. So we have community development very, very involved. We have economic development, economic vitality very involved. We have fire very, very involved. We also have our community services department because they're the ones that have to do all the maintenance. They have to pick up the trash every day. They have to keep the street and sidewalks clean. As we put out the city furnishings, they're going to have to keep that in good condition and usable and work with the businesses day to day. So this is, and we have police in our team meetings as well. So this is a pilot. There's going to be a lot of lessons learned. We are working to stay flexible and adapt, but we need a place to start, and this is where we're starting.
Great. So thank you for that. And I can appreciate how many stakeholders you brought to the table. I appreciate that's been an iterative process. I think those are great. I love iterative processes. So my question is, on the spectrum of, if you have two parties, one is negotiating with the other, right? And us, like the city being a party, saying to the business community, let's just personify them as an individual for now, here's our proposal. On the spectrum of, I fully love all of it, I'm completely in lockstep with everything you've described, let's go for it. And, let's just say, agree to disagree, right? We're nearing a point where we have to, maybe they hated some things, whatever, we went through the iterative process, and we're trying to get as close to that in lockstep, fully conformed agreement, but practically speaking, probably never going to happen, right? And at some point you say, well, we'll agree to disagree. We're going to try to capture as much benefit for the most people as possible, but we can't serve all the minutia, right? How close would you say that the city and the public works, like all these public side stakeholders, how close would you say that this proposal is to either that full lockstep, like, yes, we agree, or to that kind of like point where you feel comfortable that this plan is producing the most benefit for the most parties involved? What's that sense there? And in the sense of what the business community has said to you, where are they on the, we hate it, we love it, where are they?
Transportation Planner Baduna, do you want to chime in on this, since I know you've literally talked to pretty much all of them?
Sure. Thank you, Director. Aruna Baduna, Transportation Planner. The feedback that we receive at the outreach and engagement meetings with the businesses, again, not to boast, I'm trying to put it nicely, it's been very positive. They are very appreciative of the engagement they have seen from the city staff. So it has been very positive. Again, like you said, there is some middle ground for, it's middle ground for the city and the businesses, where we settle on. And this is, what you have is there are minor modifications to the guidelines. We are amending them, like bringing back the electric heaters language and some minor modifications. But the guidelines that you have are seeing are pretty consistent and are the ones that the businesses have seen and are comfortable. They are aware of the guidelines that are coming in, and yes, they appreciate the interaction they have had, and they are on board with the guidelines.
So they're happy with these guidelines so far? Last question.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Cranston?
Just a follow-up question. You've mentioned several times you've talked to the businesses on Castro on the 100, 200, 300 block. How much have you talked to the businesses on Dana, Villa, and beyond California Street on Castro?
I can take this one too. Thank you, Commissioner. Aruna Baduna, Transportation Planner. We have done outreach on street and via Zoom virtual to both property owners and the businesses at several times. We have invited businesses in the downtown area to attend the meetings. Today we had meetings down south of California. We have visited, we have offered staff office hours for the businesses south of California as well. Sometimes businesses do come to these meetings, but we have made our best efforts to engage the greater downtown businesses, I would say. But the most of the feedback was when initially we started was on the pet malls. And yes, there was a lot of feedback from the 100 to 300 blocks businesses. But we have offered staff hours through Zoom, virtual staff hours, and in person also beyond the 3 blocks. If that helps answer the question.
So it's,
Thank you.
sounds like it was extensive on those 3 blocks, but not as extensive outside. The 2 owners that I talked to had no idea that these things were going to extend beyond the pedestrian mall. So I think, I don't have a problem philosophically with the approach, but it was like, what's happening? So I just it wasn't clear how much outreach had been done to the periphery.
And again, my understanding is probably the most significant change between the sidewalk cafe guidelines that they were operating under and what we're talking about now is needing a wider walkway to really have enough room for the pedestrians and not create obstacles. The other piece is, and Transportation Badona, you need to correct me if I'm wrong about this, but when you were showing me the surveying of where we were seeing tables on the sidewalks, some of those businesses weren't permitted to begin with to have the tables out there. And one of the things we'll be working with them is just get them permitted. And you know, it doesn't mean that they can't have them, but we do need to make sure that, you know, they're using public right-of-way. So they do need to follow the guidelines and the standards for the use of the public right-of-way. And I'll just, again, you know, coming back to some of the main questions that you've been asking about, you know, the businesses and what they're concerned about is what I hear, particularly from our economic vitality manager, Lang, is, you know, while they understand one of the key goals of these guidelines and standards is for aesthetics and just bring up the whole look and feel, which will help attract more people, and also that will help also attract more people into the vacant storefronts when they see this really blossoming the way we need it to. But of course, they are concerned. They've spent money already on certain things. They actually brought their indoor furniture outside and it's been ruined because it was never meant to go through all this rain. So this grant program that's being discussed, that's going to kind of be in parallel with opening this up to help them buy new furniture that matches the guidelines, will be not only good for us in terms of how the whole pet mall is coming along, but hopefully will be good for their businesses too. And make it more financially feasible for them to participate in the program.
I believe we have another question from Commissioner Gutierrez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, our Transportation Director, thank you for chiming in and letting us know that those 4 businesses were, in fact, contacted and spoken to about these changes, that there was outreach, and we appreciate that information very much. I do as well. And I'm glad that we have this program where there's an opportunity for businesses to apply for grants and monies. Because I know when I had spoken to a few of them early on, they had invested, like you said before, in tents or outdoor types of coverings. And then a little while later, the city said, oh, you can't have that. You got to take it down. Doesn't mean code. So maybe they could get a refund now, right? That would be really appreciated. And I say that because we go back and forth with this type of relationship with the business community. We need you, we don't need you, we need you, we don't need you, we may need you. And then those instances, for them, reflects cost. City comes back and then says, no, you can't do that. So this regulation, I appreciate when it's needed. And in times of a crisis like we've experienced the last 3 years with the pandemic, I can see where there's miscommunication on that, right? And then we should learn from that. And this is what I think this process is all about, getting feedback from the different stakeholders who are involved in general, whether it's the business community, the community at large, and the various departments within the city's structure itself. So that's great. I know that that's not easy to do. So my question then is, in terms of community feedback, earlier you had mentioned, well, you know, we've had some complaints from folks saying that when they walk in the street, there's not enough room. And I think what my fellow commissioner member here, Mr. Nunez, was trying to ask for was specifics on that front. How many comments did you get from the community in terms of that type of issue? There's not enough space, or this or that. But further to that point, how was the outreach made? And I'm curious because I'm new to this body, so I'm going to ask these questions because it's fascinating to find out how this works. Was there a general email blast to members of the city of Mountain View who are signed up to a newsletter saying, hey, participate here, click on this link, and you can just answer these questions. We want to find out what you think? Or did you do targeted questioning like that to certain neighborhoods closer to downtown as opposed to others? Because it's interesting to find out what that was like. I know in terms of me, over on California Street, I didn't really get anything. I didn't get a mailer or an email or a heads up, this is going on, we'd like your feedback. So naturally, I'm curious. Thank you.
So a couple things. One, to set the record straight, the grant program we're talking about is in the development and proposal stage. It is going to council for consideration. I believe, what is it, May 26th?
May 9th. If I may chime in, Aruna Bhatana, it's going to council on May 9th.
Okay, on May 9th also. So council is going to be reviewing it as a different item, but on the same night as this, the concept of a grant program, and also they're going to be doing it. They have as one of their council priorities economic vitality, especially for the downtown as well as the city, and there's going to be a lot more happening in that arena, and that's all I'm going to say because it's not my area. Now, in terms of the feedback you're asking about, this is not something that we went and surveyed and we have numbers. What we are sharing with you, and CDD has heard it, Public Works has heard it, is through the years. We get an Ask Mountain View. We go to a bicycle and pedestrian advisory committee. We are just talking to folks. Or my traffic engineering group is out there. Or we see what it's like just to make sure we're keeping a wide enough path for wheelchairs to get through because we see more and more obstacles and obstructions. And then, so it's more been building through the years of things that we regularly hear. But this is the other thing we're hearing on a regular basis, and we're hearing that from our Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee, and we've been hearing it from our council members. They want wider sidewalks. They're asking it for, as part of it, more and more as part of development approvals. And they're saying they want more room for pedestrians because they want more pedestrians. So where we already have wide sidewalks, there's a goal to keep them clear and keep them available.
Okay, great. Thank you for elaborating on that. So then what I hear is that we had an extensive outreach to certain members of the community and the impact of suggestions that were given to the city by various departments or just people in general to different departments of the city structure or to council members or to whomever's with the city about anything. And then they spread the word and say, hey, well, I heard from Joe Schmo that they want more space here on the sidewalks because, there's not enough room. So there hasn't been an outreach to the community that was targeted to the city of Mountain View that way, to neighborhoods either close to downtown or to the city as a whole. I would have liked to have at least that been done up to a point. I'm sure it can be done somehow, some way, so that we can further guarantee that whatever the will of the people is that we serve is actually current, understood, and trackable.
So we are right now doing an active transportation plan for the city, which is considering both the pedestrian and bicycle needs. There's quite a bit of outreach work that's being done on that. It's not just in terms of identifying the corridors, but also visioning and goals and needs assessment. But I will tell you that it's been very consistent from our community now for a few years about wanting wider sidewalks, less obstructions in the sidewalks. And if we are going to become a more walkable community, that's one of the key things we need to be continuing to move towards.
I totally understand that. And I hope you understand the point I'm reflecting as well, because for me, that makes smart governance, right?
Right.
It's just, it goes hand in hand. And whether we want to accept that or not, that this process was botched because of the lack of that effort or not, that's not the point. The point is moving forward as we go through this process of coming back together as a city and a community, and if we want to be better, then we have to govern better. And if we need to do an outreach like this that hits the city of Mountain View, as it should, then let's learn from this moment so that moving forward we can do that. Thank you.
Okay, I see.
Commissioner, yes. Can I add a clarification follow-up to that?
Please.
Sure. In terms of outreach, Commissioner, thank you for your question. Aruna Baduna, Transportation Planner. As I said, we did do extensive outreach to the businesses, but we also took it regularly to the downtown committee and the chamber. And also, in addition, we took it to the BPAC as well. Whenever we brought the item to any of these, including the council ad hoc committee, any of the meetings are public open meetings, and we have pushed out email about the upcoming item to the wider community, whoever is subscribed to that program, and also, whoever is subscribed to those committees, and also the project mailing list. So we, I'm just kind of trying to clarify that, yes, the messages did go beyond the downtown area itself. It was pushed out to the neighborhood groups as well. So the email did go out, and we did have representation from not just downtown at these meetings, but residents of Mountain View, not necessarily the downtown neighborhood. We did have some representation at these meetings, be at the ad hoc or the BPAC or the downtown committee. We did have some representation. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that. Much appreciated. It's still not the city-wide though, but thank you.
Okay. Seeing as we're still in questions and we're entering comments, but I believe Commissioner Clark has not had a chance to speak, so I'm going to
just two questions. One was the council ad hoc committee. Did they consider the live entertainment hours, the 8 p.m.? I know some businesses do have live entertainment, like Cascal, for example, and I'm just curious if they considered extending that on weekends or something beyond 8, or if it even came up. Maybe it didn't even come up.
Yes, during the council ad hoc committee, they were generally supportive of those hours. So there was no discussion on extending it further from the ad hoc committee.
And then probably for Dawn, I know we're sort of entering into a trial temporary phase until, as you mentioned, we do permanent construction someday and have a nice permanent pedestrian mall. I mean, I assume at that time we could also look at areas of refuge, like permanent structures, that might withstand weather better. But then I know you get into which businesses in front of versus not in the public right of way. But I assume that we could consider like areas of refuge and those sorts of things as part of a permanent.
That is correct. For the permanent ped mall, it's a whole different environment. For instance, as we look at other very successful malls like the Pearl Street Mall in Colorado and so on, for instance, you might see awnings that extend out from the building frontages now and into a more extended patio area. There's, once we have a level surface, and we're not dealing with the sidewalk and then 2 steps down, we can remake the space in terms of how it relates to the buildings and the ability to potentially, add other types of structures in there as well.
Thank you.
Okay. I myself just had a few quick questions, just following up on what some of the other people have asked. As far as the dancing is concerned, that's just for the plot that is enclosed and delineated by the lower fences, or is that throughout the entire pedestrian mall area?
It should be just applying within the outdoor patio areas, because what we're talking about here is what's going to be in the license agreement terms that they have to meet. And so, for instance, this whole PED mall is being designed to leave a certain amount of public area, city programming area. So we could eventually see community services department, sometimes occasionally, remember the old Thursday Night Lives, right? We may still have some of that integrated in, and you will see dancing in the streets. And it'll be a planned activity. We have it right now with the Friday night concerts on the plaza, which, by the way, are starting up again through the whole summer, every Friday. Community Services Director says they've got a great lineup. I'm looking forward to it. But, that was very popular, and a lot of dancing happened. I'm definitely willing to, continue to work with community development, but these these outdoor patio areas are going to be, they're not that large. And for the most part, they're going to be full of their tables in order to serve patrons. Another thing to also mention in terms of taking feedback, originally we were limiting these to just outdoor dining, but one of the things the chamber requested after hearing feedback from the businesses was be more flexible and allow retail to use them. So that's another example where we listened and incorporated in guidelines that, yes, if a retail establishment wants to make use of an outdoor area, we will issue a license agreement for that as well. So, so basically, it's not prohibiting dancing on the street.
Thank you for clarifying that. I think it helps a lot. As you can tell, we care about the downtown. It is the heart of the city, and so, whenever you prohibit dancing, just the term there is probably going to set off a lot of emotions. So I just wanted to make sure that it was just for these delineated little parcels that the city is sort of in control of and responsible for. Thank you. And the last question was regarding the outreach to the side streets. Staff, I assume, knows which businesses have the permits for outdoor seating currently, and if staff can find out which ones would be affected by the 8-foot sidewalk and just make an effort to reach out to them, I think that would settle a lot of the questions about that particular one, since the 8-foot sidewalk is really the only change that is happening from what we already have. I feel pretty good about your answers to the several Evelyn streets that restaurants and businesses that are closer to Evelyn that they've been in contact with, and that they still have the ability to use the street for outdoor dining. So with that, I will now move to public comment if no one else has. You do? Okay. Commissioner Nunes, another question.
Just one last question. If we just imagine a world where this vote does not pass, just for example, what would be the next steps from staff's side, and or any implications for businesses?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Nunez, you're asking if the EPC makes a recommendation to not adopt the rest, then your recommendation would be forwarded to council for them to consider along with the entire item on, I believe, May 9th. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. No additional questions. Then we will move to public comment. If anyone in attendance would like to provide comments on this item, please fill out a yellow speaker card and provide it to the EPC clerk. If anyone on Zoom would like to provide comment on this item, please click the raise hand button in Zoom or press *9 on your phone. Phone users can mute and unmute themselves with *6. EPC clerk?
We have one speaker in Zoom, Celia Paymer. I'm going to set up the timer.
How much time?
And then I'll defer to you on that decision. The standard is 3 minutes.
3 minutes is fine. Thank you.
Okay. Celia, I'm going to allow you to talk.
Hi, I'm Celia Paymer. I'm a 15-year resident of Mountain View, living in the Blossom Hill community. So I can say that I've seen this presentation at least 4 times. So there's definitely been a ton of outreach. I can back up staff on that. Actually, when you listed the commissions you'd been to, you forgot the PRC. You also went there. I saw it there as well. And I believe the president of DBA was present at the majority of ones I went to. So the business association was definitely represented. There was a ton of feedback in many directions. I still hope that bikes will be allowed in the long-term version. But I think most of my other feedback was incorporated along with a lot of other community members. We did ask for umbrellas at some point. That was not going to be allowed, but we did say we did want shade in the summer. I agree that tents are really bad environmentally. Mountain View is trying to go natural gas free, and propane is a natural gas. It shouldn't be used as the main heating source for restaurants in the winter. It's not efficient. So people should be inside when it's available to be inside. Evelyn reopening is needed for the transit center. Buses are currently being delayed on their alternate routes, and so that reopening is going to happen. And as a result, there is going to be that construction and adjustment in front of those 4 businesses right near Evelyn. I think it's fairly unavoidable. And as we leave COVID, I hope that the EPC will reprioritize public transit as people are allowed to move inside and onto buses. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Are there any others from the public? No?
No additional speakers.
Okay, thank you very much. So then we will now move to deliberation and any motions. Commissioner Cranston?
So just one thing to be clear. The proposal that is that's been put forward for the area that has been most widely communicated makes a lot of sense to me. I get the wider going to the 4 foot to the 8 foot there. You know, a lot of the guidelines. I do kind of. I do agree with some of the awning things. I don't necessarily want the entire street to be filled with beer and tequila and, you know, canopies that are advertising thing. My concern is when you go beyond that. I think I like the idea of looking at how do we extend this into the precise plan area as a whole. And while I understand and I agree with the need to look at wider sidewalks don't just appear by saying, snap your fingers and you want wider sidewalks, okay? The reality is the sidewalks on the side streets are not as wide as they are on Castro. They've never been. And my biggest single concern in this whole thing is the change from 4 feet to 8 feet in the entire area. I am not, quite frankly, in favor of that and extending that beyond the downtown area, and without looking at that some period over time. I'm very concerned. The comment was that the 4 businesses down there got advantage of that because of COVID. Well, I don't think I've ever gone to Vaso Zero even before COVID and eaten inside. I've always gone to the outdoor seating. Okay. I don't know that I've ever been, other than to order, at Orem's on the inside. Okay, before Vita was there, it was Zahn. I don't think I ever had dinner at Zahn on the inside. Okay, they have been using the sidewalk cafe capability well before the COVID thing came along, and so I understand that we're going to need to reconfigure it. I agree. We do need to change the way the bus configuration is, but doing more to try to make sure that we allow those businesses that have been around for a long time. I haven't been to Happy Lamb myself, which is the one all the way at the end, but it seems to have a crowd all the time. So I'd hate to see us lose those. But I'm concerned about how that's handled with them. I don't know. It'd be nice to show them very clearly, okay, this is what's going to happen. You're not going to have anything outside during that period of time. But I think the overall approach kind of makes sense with with my very serious reservation on switching from the 4 feet to 8 feet on the side streets. I get it. In the downtown area, I'm very worried about it on the side streets. My comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Nunes.
Yeah, I definitely feel concerned, and it's not even just because of this proposal or any of these changes specifically, although I am about those two. But I think the reason, at least for me, and I can imagine maybe for some of my colleagues as well, the reason why so much emphasis I believe is being placed on like outreach and really trying to understand like what were the methods, what were the points of feedback, what was incorporated, the people asking for wider sidewalks, like is that a self-selecting group of people who would use Ask Mountain View when 99.999% of people in Mountain View don't know what that is, right? Like I think for a lot of us, we have our favorite businesses in the downtown that we cherish, that we love, and even though this is like a temporary proposal, if all of us can see it when we walk downtown, there's more closures, there's more empty storefronts, and it hits kind of hard when you realize how a lot of these businesses aren't able to keep up. And I think one thing that, at least for sure, I feel worried about is, these changes, will have some economic impact on these businesses. And what I'm really concerned about is, these temporary changes they've implemented over the next 3 to 5 years, even though it's temporary for some businesses, that could be the difference between you make it to the new pedestrian mall or you are gone. Like I would hate to lose Dana Street Roasters, for example, right? And so I'm finding it very hard, and maybe I'm missing it. I always could be, the problem exists behind keyboard and chair here. Where I'm not finding the information that was gathered from the businesses or where this feedback from, sidewalks is coming from. Maybe it's me. But one thing that I feel I don't have right now to be able to make as informed a choice as I would like to, because, I could effectively be part of a process that makes Dana Street go away right now, whether I say I agree or not, right? And one thing that I'm feeling, and other businesses, and so one thing I'm feeling really concerned about is that, given that there is, a kind of like a stamp here, my name going on something that could create a negative outcome that I don't want to have happen. I think one thing that would be nice, dare I say, I think some of my colleagues might also be feeling, whether consciously or not, is that it would be nice to have a sense of reassurance that everyone, to the best extent possible, is unified in a general direction. And so when I'm looking at like the staff report, when I'm looking at the hearing what's on the presentation, I'm digging through all the council reports, in the past, and I'm not finding as much, concrete, documentation for me to be able to understand, okay, widening a sidewalk, 8 to 8 feet is projected to, take a year, and, this is the projected, revenue loss, or, this is how many people have been providing feedback about, the wider sidewalks. Here is the expected loss in foot traffic due to, like, all of these figures, and then also even accounting for different sections of downtown, such as, like, Dana Street is not Castro, Franklin, et cetera. I just don't feel like there's enough there, and maybe I'm, again, being the one that's, maybe I'm woefully unqualified, but, you know, I just don't feel like there's enough here that I can glob into to understand whether or not a choice I make is going to facilitate getting a business that I love and treasure, and that many of, you know, the people in our community love and treasure out of Mountain View. So that's what I will say about that for now.
Okay, did anyone else have anything else? Because I was going to bring up the one comment about the 4-foot to 8-foot sidewalk width. We could, if Commissioner Cranston wanted to make a motion to have an addendum or a comment to what we're recommending, we could take a straw poll on that. And
I certainly can do that. I hadn't heard it necessarily voiced other places, but I mean, if I were going to vote for this, it would be, you know, in the end, it would be to approve it with removal of the change from 4-foot to 8-foot on the side streets. So my amendment would be to change the staff that we would recommend that the change from 4 feet to 8 feet not be applied into the greater P19 downtown precise plan area, and it would be limited to the pedestrian mall area.
is that something you would like to do?
That's what I would like to do.
That's your intention. Okay. Straw poll then real quick about who would be in favor of that.
Sorry,
unless you want
Madam
to
Chair.
continue.
It would be nice to hear. I think it would be nice to hear from others on the commission. I'm not sure if that was. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt that. No, there will be more comments. I'm just going to take them one by one as I hear them, just to keep it all in line, because I think if we add them up too much, then I will lose track of all the various recommendations and suggestions. So I will just bring them up one by one, if you don't mind. That's okay. We will definitely hear from everybody. Yeah, straw poll, if you don't mind. On
Before we do a straw, can we understand from staff what the implication of that is? I don't want to vote on changing something that I don't understand what the implication of changing 8 feet to 4 feet on just the side streets would be. And
okay, yeah. Well,
but if others just want to vote, that's fine too. I just won't vote for it.
Thank you. A couple things. Transportation Bonuna, by the way, sent me some additional information. I know this won't totally allay your concerns, but in talking to Red Walk, or they verified with Red Walk and communicated with them, and noted that 8 feet clearance was achievable with two-person tabletops. So, you know, that was discussed with Red Rock and confirmed. Dana Roasting can continue to have their tables by just reorienting their tables and still achieve the clearance requirements. So we're not, you know, that's just 2 examples, I realize, and it doesn't mean every single business could make it work. I will say, please, for your consideration, please realize I'm really surprised that 4 feet even existed before. That is a barely ADA clearance. That is people walking single file, you know, and so as staff, we don't even, you know, today we're trying to move even beyond our minimum was 5-foot sidewalks, building more 6 and 7 feet in various areas, because we hear constant concerns 5 feet's not enough, but 4 feet barely meets ADA. You know, definitely want to hear your input and the straw vote and so on, but and I will follow up more with staff on the selection of 8 feet, but I would strongly say, at least 6 feet. You want people to be able to walk side by side. If we're going to engage people, we're going to get a walkable downtown, we've got to provide the space for them.
Any more questions on the sidewalk to deliberate? I will ask staff really quickly also. Is this what you were intending for straw polls?
Yeah, if EPC has any feedback that they want to provide on any of the particulars, so whether it's sidewalk width or something else, we would ask that you guys do a straw vote so that we're forwarding to council the majority recommendation.
Okay, so I should have mentioned this earlier. I'm sorry. I'm just going to take them one by one if you don't mind. Oh, sorry. Did you have something to say? Absolutely.
Yeah, I think I
Please.
do. And it's that I don't have enough information, I think, to really decide one way or the other. That here, if the, what we're worried about is places that we're comfortable with now, that we know and that we love, that would be disrupted by this. And the truth is, I thought like Dana Street roasting, those tables would get knocked out of the way. But I'm not out there with a tape measure. I don't know. And I'll say this in a minute, but I think where this is all coming from is that we're all very, very sensitized to how fragile small businesses, especially restaurants, are coming out of COVID. And I think we're sensitized to that. We're protective of them. That's why we've spent 45 minutes on outreach, right? Like, we care about them, and there's a lot of empty storefronts out there. And we want people to come here, not run away from Mountain View, right? This is what I wish I had. I just wish in the staff report there could be a quick assessment of, hey, by the way, these are the 4 restaurants where they'd probably have to move their tables and they wouldn't be able to have any. Something to give me an actual practical sense of what this is going to do. Because if it wipes everybody off the sidewalk at Dana Street, I'm probably not going to be okay with it, because people love sitting out there, even if it is a little tight, right? But if they're going to be okay, I'd feel a lot better about it. I just don't know. And so I need people with data to tell me what this is actually going to do in practice, because I can't do the measurement in my head.
Okay, thank you. So then to proceed, would you like to, yes?
So I guess I was assuming that we'd kind of hear from folks, and what my first thought was, going from 4 to 8, I don't like, but if the answer is, the guidance is we want council to direct staff to go do an analysis of what's feasible on the side streets, and maybe it's something less than 8 feet, then I would be comfortable with that, okay? I don't know what the number is, but I'm not comfortable that it's well understood that 8 feet's the right answer for those businesses, and that it really needs to be looked at. So if the motion is something like, and council directs staff to go off and evaluate this and has the ability to change it to 6 feet, it's after, gives the public community development director the right to do that, I'm fine with that. But I guess I wasn't expecting a hard straw poll on that first feedback. So.
Sure, I'm sorry, I might have just jumped the gun a little bit.
Yeah,
What I was hoping for was to address your comment and put out the motion, and then we could deliberate the motion, and which we are doing. So I thank you. I'm sorry for any confusion amongst the commissioners.
I have a quick question, though. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Yeah, in terms of process, right?
Yes.
And procedure. So if you suggested for us to do a straw vote, which isn't a motion,
True.
I understand, right? Mm-hmm. Do you need a second? And if you don't get the second, it's done? Or just, how would this work?
You don't need a second. The straw poll is only for purposes of determining what will eventually be in the motion. So to the extent that the EPC wants to make some additional recommendations beyond approving the staff recommendation, what you will be adding will be based on what achieves a majority in your straw poll.
So perhaps the better question for the straw poll is, do you want to discuss the 4 to 8 foot sidewalk as something to add in for council to deliberate. Oh, Commissioner Nunes.
I don't know if, yeah, similar process stuff. Maybe there was direction coming to the meeting to, look at kind of minutia commentary and try to bracket it before, discussion got all crazy around things. But I feel like there's a deliberative element that would be very welcome, particularly around the downtown. As Commissioner Dempsey noted, there's a lot of, feelings around this issue. And I think in terms of like a temperature check around where the whole commission is on the kind of more broad aspects of this before going into the weeds is kind of what I was expecting. But maybe that's just me.
No, it's fine. Straw poll is not a true official, motion. So I just figured we'd take the temperature with the straw poll. But
I guess even straw polls create like right, and it narrows the focus to what's on the straw poll versus I was looking forward to hearing from Commissioner Dempsey, from Commissioner Gutierrez around the larger
totality
piece. Yes, and again, if it's a procedural thing that was already decided, and then I'm happy to go with that too. But
nothing
it just
is 100%
was not my expectation.
It's okay. That could change. If we want to go ahead and do that, we can do that. I feel like there was just a lot to discuss. But does anyone else have any comments aside from what we've already talked about? We can continue the comments on that, but if there were additional comments, go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you. And thank you for taking the lead and trying to suggest something that we look into to try and figure out how to build consensus, because that spot's not an easy spot to be in. So much appreciate your energy with that. Thank you. Look, man, I'm so sorry. We should have asked the question, how'd you guys get to 8 feet? Right? And we missed it. And now we're trying to figure it out. Okay, fine. In my opinion, based on what I've heard from people that I've spoken to here in Mountain View and business owners alike, and even people who visit Mountain View at night, because I go to certain bars and I hang out. And, not everyone's from here. And they've mentioned one thing loud and clear, which is they like Mountain View. They like Castro, and they like to see wider sidewalks. And look, I'm a single dad of 2 kids. I've been to Disneyland like 10, 12 times. And hate them or love them, they've got wide sidewalks on Main Street because of the people issue, right? And if we've traveled to certain parts around the world, they've got wide streets too. How I looked at this issue was more of like what was brought to our attention, not just the ADA requirements, but then also I thought, hey, maybe they're just being aggressive, which is, I'm all for that, right? You've figured out by now I want everything faster with better accountability, with something that we can hang on to and say, because of this and this report and these statistics and this analysis, we've decided to go this way and make it happen, and let's go. So I looked at the 8-foot option as thinking about the future with compliance in mind, but also people movement, and that thereby enabling more business, whether it's during the day, afternoon, at night, on the weekends, weekdays, what have you. So that's how I looked at it, right? Like Commissioner Dempsey, though, I wish I had more info, right? And sometimes you don't have that, and you have to make the best judgment that you can to say yay or nay. Is the plan perfect? No. Would I have liked more community outreach? Community outreach, not just those in the know who are part of subcommittees and email distribution lists that are already there in place. No. If we're going to move forward together this way to have a better outcome economically, to build a resilient Castro downtown area, and if we're going to have the city of Mountain View invest to go all in to make that happen, because we've actually listened to what's out in the community, that makes sense to me. So having said that, I'm still would vote in favor of this plan, though I have some hesitancy, and that's why I had suggested earlier that we should learn from this moving forward so that we can capture all those other opportunities to get feedback so that we can really have consensus building that way. Because if we don't do it now, then we lose that opportunity in general, because now it's out of our hands and now it's going to be into city council's perspective, which is great. And they have in the end the choice to be able to say yay or nay to whether what we would have proposed with a straw vote or with our thoughts about expanding the sidewalk from whatever measurement to 8, right? And they can still take that on one way or another if that's an issue for them. But I want to appreciate staff's time, though, and coming up with everything that you have been able to give us the best perspective on how we can then make the best choice for the future of a city. So thank you.
Commissioner Dempsey, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That was really well said. You know, I've kind of learned to not expect that we ever have a perfect product in front of us, because that's actually sort of our job, right? Our job here is to take it in and figure out if it needs a little, you know, a little salt or a little chili or a little pepper or something, right? I actually, you know, I think clearly a lot of good work has gone into this. I don't have a whole lot of technical quibbles, really. I think, you know, for me, I think it'd be obvious from the conversation we had tonight that the two parts that I think I just want more confidence about are outreach and impact. And, you know, the outreach is, we just got done with housing element, and outreach was an incredibly important part of our job. That is our job, is making sure outreach is happening and making sure that the community's talking back to us, right? And I think I'm much more sensitized to the importance of outreach, and not just a little bit of outreach, but like real aggressive outreach, because not everybody pays attention to those little postcards they get in the mail, right? Outreach is hard, and I don't pretend that it's easy, and I don't wag my finger at anyone, because that's a really hard thing to do, especially when you have multiple languages spoken. Some folks are real busy. Some folks have businesses here, but they don't live here. I do not pretend at all that the outreach challenge is easy. What I care about, though, and what I think is really, really important, is that the folks who do decide to run a business here, and I don't care if it's a printing shop or a small talkeria or Google, is that they feel like we, the city, really do care about them and that we really want them here. That's really, really important to me. And in talking to, you know, I always, when I go in, you know, when I go to La Espuela or go wherever, I always ask them, like, how's the business going? Are more people coming in? I always ask them about this. And sometimes I ask, like, how's it working with the city? I don't always hear the best things. Some people think it's real hard to work with the city. I would love to be able to walk into a business and have them tell me they love working with the city of Mountain View. That's what I would love that. I would love it. So if you're at all, or if anyone's at all surprised about how much time we spent talking about outreach tonight, that's why. We really want them to love working with the city, and we want them to feel like we listened to them and we cared about them. Because again, a lot of them are fragile. Some places that I loved went out of business. It broke my heart. I love my old ramen shop, Maruichi. Love that place. And we lost some things that we cared about. And I don't like empty storefronts out on Mountain View. It looks bad. And I want to see that fixed. So anyway, I think outreach is a big part of how we get back to that, which is why, at least me, I've been harping on this all night. Because I think it actually is really important, even though I recognize how really difficult it is. And then lastly, I just think if we can get a little bit more information about how this is going to play out in the real world, knowing which restaurants or which cafes are going to lose their outdoor seating or whatever, I would like to hear that. And I think, you know, in truth, a little bit of representation goes a long way. If you had just been able to come in with like a letter from the chamber or a letter from a couple of downtown businesses saying, "Oh yeah, no, we've talked about this 7 ways from Sunday. This is good. This is a good product." That would actually, we could have cut 45 minutes out of tonight, honestly. So I think that might actually help when you go on to the next part of the process. Just go ask for a few support letters from the business community to say, yes, oh, we've talked about this so much. I think that would actually really help and sort of save a lot of time and short circuit things. But you know, for all the difficulties that we've raised tonight, I do know that a lot of work went into this, and I do think by and large you have a good product. I do think we have to talk about 4, 6, 8 feet out, you know, whether it's on Dana Street or Castro Street. Yeah, there's some parts here that probably deserve a little more cooking. But I do think a lot of good work has been done. And I hope it has been informative, both for, for staff and for anybody listening, about sort of what the values you're seeing on display here tonight. That's enough for me.
Commissioner Clark, were you wanting to speak? I'm sorry, I can't clear these, so I just want to make sure.
Oh, I'm next. Okay, I have a slightly different perspective. I think I share some of I understand where my colleagues are coming from, but look, staff cares just as much about businesses being able to do business here and all the things that we've just described tonight as just in my experience with them over the years as we are trying to state tonight. It is not staff's job to go get a letter from the chamber. It is our job to pick up for something like this where it's coming to us, it's been to a council ad hoc committee, which is very rare. The outreach has been going on for a year plus. It's reasonably non-controversial. You can tell it's probably reasonably non-controversial based on just the number of slides here, and I know we all care deeply about our downtown. But this is the sort of thing where, if I want to just do a quick back check of, is this, has this been vetted? Does the chamber feel confident about it? Does a neighborhood association feel confident about it? I send an email, I pick up the phone. Like, it isn't staff's job to go, beef up their, do all of that outreach. That's part of why we sit here, and that's part of the time commitment that we've chosen to sign up for. So I understand the sentiment here, but I just want to get across that, I know how much outreach staff does on just small things, let alone something of this magnitude. And I understand that outreach keeps coming up in the context of housing element and this and really important things. But if we want to have a discussion about what outreach is done on various issues, then we should have that as a separate conversation and not litigate it every single time something like this comes before us. So I guess what I'm trying to express here is that a lot of skepticism, I think, both very valid skepticism and some skepticism that is, I think, if I were a staff member, I would frankly be somewhat offended by, just based on the amount of effort that I know that they go to, to have office hours outside of businesses on blocks to bring these up at some of the neighborhood meetings that have occurred, I'm sure, with council. So I get all of that, and I understand the concern, and we're talking about all this because we care so deeply about our downtown. I just want to make sure that staff doesn't come away tonight feeling like, they did something wrong because they didn't. It is fine for us to provide, suggestions for how we might like to see that feedback and data, as was just described. What businesses would be impacted on some of the side streets. That's all very valid stuff. And one of the comments that I would just make, one thing that would have been helpful here tonight is just, typically staff, when they go to the council, they'll put together, a summary of the outreach that was done, and I'm sure you'll do that for their staff report too. But if that had been done, a few weeks earlier, just so it could have been included in this packet, I think that would have helped quite a bit. And it could have summarized, the outreach that had been done with the chamber, with the downtown committee, with the businesses, all those things, and summarized. So I think that would have helped. And then I think the other thing we've heard tonight that I would be perfectly fine with is if we want, before this goes to council, to explore, whether 8 feet or 6 feet makes sense on some of the side streets, and just include that as a suggestion for something that maybe staff can research before it goes to council. And then in the section of the staff report where you talk about the EPC discussion, we can just mention that, one of the key things that came up was the discussion of the wider sidewalks along the side streets and how that might impact some key businesses that I think all care deeply about, and whether or not 6 feet, for example, would be a good compromise that might be provided. But if 6 feet, for example, would still require certain businesses to reorient the tables the way that they would under 8 feet, then it's probably not worth it, right? So maybe some additional analysis can be done, and that can just be added to the discussion for council. But overall, I'm supportive of this. I appreciate what staff has done. One, being super flexible as we went through, going from the Sidewalk Cafe program to the flexibility that we had during COVID, to now looking at what is the interim solution that offers it is a little bit more compliant, but also provides the flexibility that we need to get from here to when we have a more permanent solution. And it's going to be very disruptive when we there's no way around it. Like it was a very tough decision I know that council made when we decided to do the pedestrian underpass. We knew that it was going to impact businesses for a couple of years on either end, and that's just something when you're doing business that you sign up for. You know that things are going to change, and some people will be impacted more than others. And the most that we can do there is make sure that we're in constant communication with them, that we're doing everything we can to mitigate the impacts of those things as they occur. But there's no the more certainty that we can provide, I think the better, and being open and honest with those businesses about the long term and what the ultimate outcome will be. But the short-term pain that's going to be required to get there. But overall, I appreciate this sort of interim step where we're trying to ensure that we maintain our pedestrian mall and that we're doing everything that we can to support our businesses in the interim, and then moving to a longer-term solution. So I'll support the when we're ready, the staff recommendation is printed in the staff report, as well as the if other folks are amenable, looking at the 6 versus 8 feet and whether that would make a significant impact on folks.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Nunez, you were next.
Yeah, so I appreciate the mention of that summary of findings. Really, I think is what was missed, and quite frankly, I still feel is missing with regards to my ability to understand what the feedback from the community is and was. Yeah, I know staff works really hard. I appreciate what staff does, and yet, I am in a position here, sitting in the chair, where there's a friction between my, ability to make a decision and not having or feeling like I don't have enough information to make that decision appropriately. So I will ask for any and all who are listening, who are in a ability to maybe just use ChatGPT to create a summary of findings. I don't know. That would be really helpful, because I know I definitely don't need people to do more outreach than is necessary, but I also want to know what the findings were. So I hope that is a reasonable request. I am comfortable with the asking of that 6 to 8 sidewalk open-ended question. I know, I certainly don't have the information here, nor do I need it, but I'm very comfortable with, sending something up the chain, indicating that it ought to be explored or assessed a little bit further.
Okay. Commissioner Cranston, you're up.
So maybe I'll take a little context here. So before moving to Colorado and before moving to California, I lived in Boston. And so I have been lucky enough to actually live places where there's really cool pedestrian malls. Okay, the Faneuil Hall Marketplace in Boston is amazing. Okay, I hope we get to that. The Pearl Street Mall. When you said that, I'm like, yes, they're using good model. So when I looked at the downtown area and what was in here, I saw elements of those programs that made sense to me, and which is why I said I'm comfortable with what's been put in for it as a framework. When it comes to community outreach, I'm sure I'm in a very small minority of all the people in Mountain View that have actually been to both the Faneuil Hall Marketplace and the Pearl Street Mall to even have a context to know what to ask. The challenge with community outreach is when you put something that's purely conceptual in front of them, they don't know what you're talking about. And so there is there's limitations on what we can ask and what kind of answers we're going to get. So I agree with the need for community outreach, but having an expectation that they're going to say, oh, we'd like to see this and this and this, when they've never actually seen one that works, I'm skeptical of that. The one thing that I encountered in this was I did exactly what Commissioner Clark said. I went around and I walked into the Dana Street Roasting and said, do you know about this thing where they're talking about extending the thing for downtown into Dana Street? And he's like, what are you talking about? He had no idea. Okay, so maybe he's just one of the 10 or so businesses. And I tried to find others, and most of the time, because I was in the middle of the afternoon, the owners and managers weren't there. But at the other one that I asked about at Red Rock, whoever I was talking to wasn't familiar with it. So I tried that. And what I came with was, and what I'm hearing here is that perhaps the outreach into those side streets wasn't as extensive as it was in the others. And I view the change from 4 to 8 as a one-way trip. And my caution is, let's make sure we take the trip that we want, because if we decide later that it should have been 6, we'll never get it back. So my reason for wanting to look at it is, I view it as a one-way trip. I think, like I said, I would love another Faneuil Hall. I'd love another Pearl Street Mall. That would be amazing. And I think you've done a lot of good work on this. So I'm not questioning what staff has done. I am cautious about one element of the plan that it feels like a one-way trip. Maybe it's not. Maybe keeping it at 4 isn't the right answer. Should it have to be 8? Maybe. But that's my context. I can't convey the Faneuil Hall marketplace to my fellow colleagues, okay? But when I look at what was in here, it's like, okay, this makes sense to me. And so we don't have everything, but I'm also skeptical of what kind of community outreach would ever tell us on something that most people have never even seen. So that's my comment.
Commissioner Gutierrez.
Hey, thank you very much. I love this conversation because we are getting more perspectives into how each of us think. And staff, just so you know, we're all professional here. There's been no attack towards you, I don't think, in general. Commissioner Dempsey and myself, we're very respectful in our asking of questions to our presenters and to the team as a whole, and even the city attorney and Eric Anderson. We're all adults here. We're professionals. We can agree to disagree. And even in the end, Chris Clark said something about some of your findings and made some suggestions as to how this could have been improved upon, which is more or less along the same mindset that we all had about making suggestions in a friendly way to make things better, right? So having said that, and having to understand that type of language, we can work from here to make things better. And I think that's the whole point. Now, if any of you felt offended by anything that I said in general, or other members of the commission, then I apologize for that. And we'll work together better moving forward. Thank you.
Okay. Any additional comments? From my perspective, we heard a lot about the sidewalks, so the straw poll was going to come into play now after deliberation, full deliberation, and I just want to get a feeling for who would be interested in adding something in for the sidewalks on the side streets. Straw poll. You can just raise your hands. Yeah.
Excuse me.
Oh,
Chair.
yes, please.
Would somebody like to propose some language? There was a lot of different language kind of bouncing around.
Okay.
Something kind of to know what people are straw polling on.
Sure. Commissioner Cranston, since you were the first to bring it up.
Wish I could replay what Commissioner Clark said a minute ago. So that we approve it with guidance to staff to look at the side streets more closely and bring that to council as part of it, hopefully before May 9th or after that, as to whether the change from 4 to 8 is appropriate, or perhaps some other number may make more sense. I think that's what I heard you say.
Yeah, it was going to be, and feel free to jump in if I get this, if this isn't possible, but just in the section where you discuss, the summary feedback from the EPC, just mentioning that one of the key things that came up were the sidewalks on the side streets, and maybe if you have time to do a quick analysis whether or not obviously you can still stick with your recommendation of 8 feet if you feel that's appropriate, but maybe being able to just address whether or not a reduction to 6 would have a significant impact. If that would mean that certain businesses would need to reorient their tables, or if it would, then so be it. But just maybe looking at a variance there as opposed to just sticking with the 8 or 4 and nothing in between. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah, I would be in favor of taking a little bit of time to do that as well. And if the impact is negligible, then move forward with what you think is best. That's my take on it. So I think straw poll wise, it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4. We have enough to add that language in or action in, if possible. On the outreach side, we had a lot of discussion. I think we're a lot in agreement more than disagreement. And so I just wanted to say that I don't know that we would need a straw poll for that, other than perhaps recommending to staff to add more information to, and this is my take, perhaps you guys will have comments on this, to add data or reassurance that outreach has been done, how much outreach, and to ensure that the side street businesses also were talked to and had feedback that was incorporated. I think, as others have mentioned, it's really just the reassurance that it has been done, that it has been as iterative as we've learned throughout the evening. So unless there are others who want to add anything in about outreach, I think we're going to be okay on that. Yes, please, Commissioner Nunez.
For staff, I guess, does that feel like a reasonable request, and or to what extent more like labor would it be to maybe just break apart any findings by, like side street, a summary of findings, like what's the overhead on that?
Can you clarify what sort of summary findings you're seeking for the side streets?
So if, we were to have had in this packet a section that says something to the effect of, we reached out to 200 businesses, 54 responded, 8 of them were on Dana, 20 were on this block, whatever, and here were their concerns. Here's how many people on Ask Mountain View have mentioned narrow sidewalks. Just what's the possible overhead? Is it reasonable to, ask for something like that?
Yeah, I appreciate. We definitely can provide a summary of input that we received, and I think we can also definitely include information on, particular businesses that we spoke to, or even the number of businesses. So some of that information we can definitely provide. And it would be something that's joint, and we're sort of already collating as part of Public Works and Community Development Department staff. So that is something we plan to provide as part of council information. We can include that.
Great. Okay, thank you. I, for one, am pretty excited about what's to come ahead. I know we have the full-on design of the permanent pedestrian mall coming in a couple years, and there will be lots of public input and outreach, I'm sure of, and everybody here will be on it to ensure that that's the case, and probably jump in with their own input. Again, I'll just reiterate that it seems like, it's obvious how much people are emotionally tied to the downtown. And so my take on it was that there was a lot here that addressed a lot of what the public had mentioned in the past meetings I had seen, or a lot of members of the community that I have talked to. And so I was pleased to see that. I am happy to support it as well with the friendly research that you were going to, sorry, probably not friendly research, it's just research that you're going to put in to determine whether or not this sidewalk width is sufficient or will have an impact if you change it from 4 to 8 or 6 to 8. So I am also in favor. And it seems that we have a motion by Commissioner Cranston.
I don't think I need to actually incorporate what Mr. Clark and read the straw poll into the motion, correct? The way it was worded. It's in the staff report. Or do I need to?
I think you can refer to it.
Okay.
Did you want something more specific?
No, I mean, I think we're all kind of in collective agreement, and we've transcribed it, I think, in this summary about the EPC meeting, provide the discussion about this concern around the sidewalk width, along with some additional analysis about the effect of various widths on businesses.
Okay, so I move code amendments to Chapter 36 zoning of the city code and the downtown precise plan P19 to repeal the sidewalk cafe program and replace it with a new outdoor patio program as applied to private property to allow for outdoor dining and merchandise displays in conformance with proposed design guidelines of the downtown Mountain View outdoor patio standards/guidelines that will apply to the public right-of-way.
Thank you for that. And we have a seconder, Commissioner Nunez. So we can bring it to an EPC vote at this time, I believe.
Motion carries 6-0 with Commissioner Haymeyer absent.
Okay, thank you very much. We will close out. Oh, sorry, did you have more?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to confirm, Commissioner Cranston, did you read both of those items 2 and 3?
On the screen was only one item.
We don't have it listed.
Okay,
I
sorry.
think you read the title of the item, but I assume what his motion was the recommendation as printed in the staff report.
Okay, all right.
With the.
Sorry.
Does he have to read the whole thing out?
It says item text, so.
He doesn't, no. I would suggest that you move the staff recommendation as printed in the staff report.
Okay, I move the staff recommendation as printed in the staff report.
Thank you.
Do we have to vote again?
Yes, and there was a second?
Seconder. Oh, we need
Commissioner Nunez.
Commissioner Nunez.
Okay, could you just? No, I meant, can you just vote again? Can you just vote again now that we have the actual motion? Thank you.
And motion carries 6-0 with Commissioner Haymeyer absent.
Okay, now we can close this agenda item and move on to Agenda 6, Commission staff announcements, updates, requests, and committee reports. No action will be taken on any questions raised by the Commission at this time. Does anyone have anything to report, staff?
Sure. Yeah, I think most of you are probably aware. Last week, we took the housing element to City Council and it got adopted, so that was a big victory. We're submitting it to HCD in the next couple of days, so hopefully that'll go smoothly. There is an April 22nd Earth Day celebration, but we're also starting outreach for the biodiversity strategy and urban forest plan along with that, so tell your friends, tell your family. The upcoming council study session is more discussion on their work plan, and you guys provided some input on that, so it'll be an interesting discussion. Next meeting for this body is an exciting one. The North Bay Shore Master Plan is scheduled, so that'll be an exciting meeting. I did get a request from one of the commissioners to provide an overview of the builder's remedy projects that have been submitted. And actually, I drew up a little map here. I'll put it up. If I'm ready here. Okay, so we've received 5 applications, and here's the general distribution of those applications. The one at the very top there is a 385-unit project at the Ambra olive oil site. Doesn't include the historic building, but it would replace the previous proposal at that site. The 2200 one there is the movie theater site on Shoreline. The 77-unit one there is on Fayette. It was previously approved for a 44-unit project. Yeah, condos. The 200-unit one there is on Gamble Way. And the 85-unit one there is on the corner of Tyrella and Middlefield. And of course, they would be required to provide 20% low income. And I will just say the caveat that not all of these have been fully reviewed by staff to determine that they have provided a complete application. Some of that review is ongoing.
Any other announcements from anyone else? With that, we will adjourn this meeting at 9:16 p.m. And the next regularly scheduled EPC meeting will be May 3rd. Thank you, everyone.